Oh, she's
Good evening. My name is Derek Valdez, and welcome to Out Talk. Today, I'm joined here by Karla Payne, Executive Director of Open Arms Rape Crisis Center and LGBT Plus Services. Thank you, Karla, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure.
Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about Open Arms and about the services that you provide to the community?
Yes, Open Arms has been around for 25 years. We started as Assault Victim Services, and a lot of people knew us as the Concho Valley Rape Crisis Center. But we recently changed our name to Open Arms because we added the LGBT plus services. And we started that in September of 2015. So we not only provide direct services to people who have been victimized by sexual assault or sexual violence, or anyone who's been affected by sexual assault or sexual violence. We still provide our education and primary prevention programs to the community, to all ages. And now we offer advocacy, just support, guidance, crisis intervention, support services to the LGBT plus community. And we've also kind of taken it upon ourselves to offer Pride Week every year. So this was our second year to do it. It was very successful, and we were so glad that so many people came out and celebrated that with us.
Great. When you talk about your services, are your services free to the community, or is there a sliding scale? How is that provided to the community?
Yes, all of our services are free. We get funding from the government. We get some federal funding and some state funding, and they dictate that we have to offer our services for free. We would prefer to take appointments, but someone can walk into our office Monday through Friday between 8 and 5 and be able to talk to someone and get crisis intervention and advocacy provided.
And you said it's just on a walk-in basis, or do you like call-ins as well?
Yeah, people can call and make an appointment. We can go and meet with people where they are. Our Director of Victim Services, Heather Hodge, she sometimes goes to schools. She can go to Sarah's house. She can go to other social service agencies and provide the services there.
Okay. And you were talking about LGBT plus services. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how long has that been part of the agency? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we started that in September of 2015. We just saw that there was a high correlation between sexual assault and the LGBT community. Not a lot of people from the LGBT plus community come forward and talk about their sexual assault, just because I think that people didn't realize there were services that they could come to. I remember we had a board member who was an ASU professor, and she said that one of the students disclosed that she had been sexually assaulted, and the professor said, well, why don't you go, to the Rape Crisis Center? And she said, oh, well, I'm gay, and so I don't think that they'll give me services. And that's not true. We offer services to anybody, regardless of orientation or race or, anything. And so we thought, well, maybe we need to put that out there more and let the LGBT community know that we are here and we are supportive, and actually, focus on that a little bit more. And so that's what we decided to do. And a lot of people have come forward who identify as LGBT or something else. And they said that they've been, along with being bullied and harassed and physically assaulted, a large number of those people have also been sexually assaulted.
And what is the number, if you could say, or if you know offhand, the number of LGBT plus victims that you see compared to cisgender community?
Well, so far, the ones that we've seen here, I would say it's probably 50%. And we just started our services, so I think there's probably a lot more out there, unfortunately. A lot of times, people who identify other than straight and cisgender are targeted, for violence, for sexual assault, just because of their identity, just because of their orientation. And so I think that number is probably pretty high, unfortunately. And again, I think that there's just not a lot of resources for the LGBT community, or that they know about. And so they may not come forward, they may not talk about it as much. And so we may see that number as being lower than what it really is.
And usually we talk about LGBT, but we often forget that there's a plus side to the LGBT.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that for those that may not know what that plus stands for within the LGBT community?
Sure. And for those who don't know what the LGBT part is, too, excuse me, L is for lesbian, G is for gay, B is for bisexual, and T is for transgender. Three of those have to do with orientation, and transgender has to do with identity. We chose to put the plus on the end of LGBT when we are talking about our services because there's so much more that people identify as. We're so used to the binary, people being either male or female, identifying as straight, heterosexual couples, that we forget that there are people who are non-binary and they may identify as something maybe a little bit of male, maybe a little bit of female, maybe, more male than female. There's a continuum. And some people are on one end as very feminine or very masculine, and then the other end is the opposite. So people can fall anywhere on that continuum. There's also people who are just gender nonconforming. They don't want to put a label on it, which is fine. We feel comfortable with labels. Right. And sometimes that helps because we put a word to it, but that's what they are. It's just labels. Some people are born intersex, which means they may have a little bit of both anatomic sexual reproductive organs, and any number of things. Some people identify as a little bit of both, a little bit of female and a little bit of male. So that plus just encompasses everybody. We don't want to leave anybody out. It also includes people who are asexual, people who don't have any sexual feelings towards any sex or any identity. It also includes those who are questioning. So it includes everybody. However someone identifies is okay. We want people to know that they're valuable and they're worthy, no matter who they are, how they identify, who they love. People are people.
And recently, y'all added a new program or a new assistance program to our transgender community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
So that those who may be considering or who are transgender and are needing assistance on maybe getting their name changed or legally their male to female or female to male marker changed.
Definitely. Yeah, we were real lucky. We got about a $9,000 grant from the Borealis organization, and they gave us that money so that we could help people who identify as transgender get their name changed on their driver's license, because a lot of times transgender people who are going through their transition, they may look different than what the name is on their ID, and that can make some situations pretty awkward and embarrassing, and sometimes they feel some shame because of that. So those services are there to help with that, and also to change the gender marker. Because people who are transgender identify as, the gender they feel they are, that they identify with, and they want everything to match. So if their name matches on their ID and their gender marker matches, then, they feel a little more whole.
And I just want to let our viewers know that if y'all have any questions, to please send them in, and we could have Karla answer as many questions as you may have to the best of our abilities. And talking on the same line of transgender, how long does that process take, or how long would that process take from start to finish? Do you have, is there a time frame or?
It just varies. It's different for everybody. Some people may start presenting, that means they may start by wearing the clothes that they feel more comfortable in. They may, if they're transitioning from male to female, they may start wearing makeup, things like that, for the outward appearance. And then at some point, they may start to take hormones. And then at some point, if and when that's something that the individual wants to do, they may choose to have some kind of surgery. There can be top surgery and bottom surgery. So there's just a lot of different avenues that they can go through. But it's up to each individual as to how fast or how slow they want to do that process.
And within that process, is there something that they have to do? Is there any type of counseling or any type of assistance from y'all that they need to come and seek, in addition to the monetary that they receive?
Yeah, definitely. In order to change their name and their gender marker, they do have to have been through some kind of transition, whether they're taking hormones, that could be part of it. They are required to go to some counseling regarding their identity. So there has to be proof of that. And with this money, we're able to pay for the counseling and pay for some of the legal aspects of it too.
And if y'all notice that there is an empty chair next to Karla, and Cadence is currently on a scan call with our P flag. So turning around to the P flag, can you talk a little bit about that? If you know what's going on?
It's been many years since we've had a P flag chapter here, and P flag is for parents and friends and family members of lesbian and gays. And so it's just a support group for those allies who are parents and friends of someone who's in their life who identifies as LGBT plus. And it's just a way to talk about some common issues, some common concerns when dealing with various topics. And so we've worked really hard, and it seems like it's been forever. But we are getting that going. We do have a board now, and Cadence is actually on one of the conference calls to get everything squared away. We filed, the legal status for it, so that should be happening very soon.
And she'll tell us more about it, I guess, when she comes back in.
Yeah.
In regards to sexual assault, and I would just like to read you something. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, lesbian, gay, and bisexual people experience sexual violence at similar or higher rates than heterosexuals. Can you talk about why that is?
I think we, especially here in Texas, we live in a pretty conservative place. And I think people don't know how to handle other people who are different from them. And so a lot of people who identify as LGBT plus sometimes are targeted for violence because people just don't understand it. And they don't know any other ways to deal with it, or, it's just due to ignorance.
And earlier you talked about that the number may be a little bit higher than what is reported. Can you talk a little bit more about that and detail about why you feel or why it is that there's possibly more sexual assaults that occur than that are reported to the authorities?
Sure. Just like with, cisgender straight people, that number is pretty low to begin with who report. There's fear of being believed. There's fear of being blamed for their sexual assault. And with the LGBT plus community, that fear is even greater. Some people have probably had an experience where they went to law enforcement or even a teacher at school or a boss or something with an issue, and they weren't believed because of their identity or their orientation, or they were dismissed or not taken as seriously. So that all, when you have those experiences early on and then something happens, then you're less likely to go forward and report. And so I think that's a big reason why a lot of people don't report.
And if someone, a victim of sexual assault, comes to you, or you are a victim of sexual assault, what should you do with either the victim or yourself? What steps should they take?
If someone's recently been sexually assaulted, like it's just happened, we suggest that they go to the hospital, call law enforcement immediately. But if they don't think to do that, and that's pretty common, then have someone take you to the hospital. The hospital at Shannon, we have sexual assault nurse examiners, and they're nurses who have been specifically trained in evidence collection from what we call a SANE kit or a rape kit. So they know how to collect evidence as well as make sure that the patient is being cared for physically. And so other parts of that include taking their clothes as being pieces of evidence, giving them certain prophylactics, to make sure, that they're okay physically. So we suggest that, not to shower or douche or anything like that, even though that's the first thing you want to do, because you feel dirty, you feel like you want to get that off. That could be used as evidence. And so, that's what we suggest. If something has happened and it's been more than 96 hours, they can't do the kit. So you wouldn't go to the hospital unless you feel like there's, some physical issues that do need to be taken care of. But no matter when it happened, whether it was in childhood or last week or last month, they can call us. And, in order to get our services, they don't have to have made a police report or anything like that. If they're just, having some flashbacks or some nightmares or just having some trouble and they can relate it back to what happened, then they can come in and talk to somebody and we can help them through that.
In regards to confidentiality, how does that work out with an agency? If someone comes through your doors and says that I've been sexually assaulted, what do y'all do? What is y'all's responsibility to either law enforcement or in the social field? What is your responsibility?
We are bound by confidentiality, so we don't have to tell law enforcement. We don't have to tell nurses anything. We can keep complete confidentiality, and I know that's not true with a lot of agencies. I know that, for example, if a student at ASU discloses that they've been sexually assaulted and they report that, there's certain protocol that they have to go through, and they may not be able to keep everything confidential. But here at Open Arms, we can keep everything confidential. Now with minors, that's a little bit different because, we have to make sure that we're doing everything legal. But even with minors, a lot of times we can keep a lot of it confidential. We like to work with, parents and the caregivers of people who are under 18, but sometimes they're really not a support. And so we work as best we can with them too.
In regards to sexual assault and suicides, is there a correlation between the two, or have you seen that, or do you know of any type of correlation?
Yeah, I don't have any hard statistics because, again, it's hard to know, exactly what those are because there's a lot of different reasons why people commit suicide. But we have seen that, especially with people who are adult survivors of childhood abuse, and maybe that abuse was chronic and severe. Sometimes if they don't get any intervention or don't get any healing from that, sometimes that can lead to suicidal ideation, and people end up taking their own lives just because they feel like they can't ever get over it. They feel like they can't get it out of their head. And nobody ever gets over it. It's going to be something that's always going to be there. But it is possible to work through it and get some healing and be able to have a normal, happy, healthy life after.
In addition to counseling that y'all provide, is there any type of support groups within the agency that maybe a group setting that somebody could come to hear other stories of survival?
Yes, and it's really good to have support groups because a lot of times, when we've been through a traumatic event, we may think, that I'm the only one that's happened to. Nobody understands me. So when you have a support group, that really helps because, you're not alone. And there's a lot of things that people have done that have helped that they can share with someone else. So yes, we do offer a support group. Right now it's once a month, and it's the first Thursday of the month. I think that's right. And it's here at our office. And our director of victim services, Heather, is the one who facilitates that group. So just call her and let her know if you want to attend that group. She just likes to talk to people first before they actually come, just to make sure it's a good fit for them. yeah, and just come and be with other people.
Could you give our viewers your address and phone number if they needed to show up, to how they could contact?
Yeah, right now we're in the basement of the Wells Fargo building that's downtown. You would park in the parking lot, and then you go in. It's kind of the back of the bank. If you don't want to park on the street on the Beauregard side. And you just take the elevator and come to the basement, and we're down here. I say for now because we're really growing out of the space. We because of the increase in the LGBT services, and we've been able to hire Cadence, who is our LGBT plus services director. We just need more space. So what we're doing is we did receive a grant from the Financial Health Foundation for $200,000, which is going to go a long way towards our total of about $360,000, which is what we need to buy the building that we have our eye on, and some furniture, and just to get us in there and get us started. So if anybody wants to contribute to that fund, or if they know a business or a corporation that might want to give thousands of dollars, they could be a room sponsor. We have some information on our website and our Facebook page about that. That would help us get into our new building, and it can't be soon enough.
And can you give those websites, or the website and the Facebook page, so that if anybody would like to donate to the agency, where they can go?
Our website is openarmscb, as in Concho Valley, .org. And our Facebook page is just Open Arms RCC LGBT. And if you start to type in Open Arms, it should come up. But you can contact any of us. Just let me know. If you know someone's a board member, you can let them know. If you would like to give, or if you know someone or a business who would be able to give.
And just to bring it back to sexual assault, do you know of any, I know the research is limited, but is there any type of studies that have found those who identify as LGBT higher rates of child sexual abuse, or do you know of any type of studies that show that there may be higher sexual abuse in childhood, and they identify as LGBT plus?
The studies that I have seen have all been around 50%. About 50% of the LGBT community have been sexually abused as children. And about 50% of people who identify as transgender have been sexually assaulted. And it's hard to have statistics on any of that, just because, for one thing, we don't know exactly how many LGBT identified people there are, because it's still dangerous for some people to identify that way, and so nobody knows. Right. But of the ones who have identified and have disclosed some abuse, reported is about 50%, which I personally think it's probably more like 75% or 80%.
And some may say that if you're sexually abused as a child, that's why you became LGBT. Would you agree with that or disagree with that? And if so, why?
Right, I totally disagree with it. Just because they're two different things. Sexual abuse is not a consensual sexual act. A perpetrator is using sex as a tool. And so because the victim is not consenting to what is going on, it's abuse. It's not sex for them. I've had some teenage boys, who were sexually abused as children, concerned about, does this make me gay now? Was there something in me that the perpetrator saw in me that they thought was gay? Has nothing to do with that. Perpetrators choose their victims based on their vulnerability and their availability, and that's about it. Most perpetrators that we know of, that studies have been done on, are straight cisgender males, and there are some who happen to be gay men, but the numbers are higher that they're straight cisgender, just because that's what we've seen so far. So it doesn't have anything to do with the victim's orientation or the perpetrator's orientation. It has to do with a power differential. So the perpetrator is choosing that victim based on their vulnerability and how they can get to that person.
When, as a service provider, do you see any type of difficulties or challenges when trying to promote safety and community reconnection for your survivors? Do you see any type of difficulty working and reconnecting them back to the community?
No. What we do is we do a lot of education, for one thing. A lot of people don't even realize what has happened to them was sexual assault. And so when we talk about what sexual assault is and what it isn't and what happened to them wasn't their fault, at first there's that sense of, and when we hear about a sexual assault, the general public sometimes thinks, well, how can something like that happen at random? There has to have been something that the victim did to provoke it. It kind of shakes our sense of a just world, and so our sense of safety is kind of unsettled at that point. But when we learn more about how much power we do have and what it takes to get through and survive something like that, you realize that you're really stronger than you think. We talk about safety in, just protecting ourselves as to where we go and how to maybe conduct ourselves to maybe help lessen the odds of being a victim. But, if there's a perpetrator and they see that you're available and there's a vulnerability there, whether it's just that you're a woman, whether it's because you may identify as LGBT, just our vulnerabilities can be anything. Perpetrators really do pick up on that, and they it's like they can sense that, and that's what they go for. But as long as we take precautions to maybe be around safe people, go to safe places, then we do all we can to be safe. And we can't, live our whole lives being afraid of going out again or being around people again. And once that healing starts, then you realize, I can be safe again, and I can go out and be who I really am.
Is there a percentage of, sexual assaults against people that we do know compared to those that we don't? Is there a number or a percentage that you know of?
As far as whether we know the perpetrator?
Correct.
As the victim?
Correct.
Oh, yeah. Vast majority of the time of a sexual assault is where the victim does know the perpetrator. Now, that can be an intimate partner. It can be a spouse. It can be a friend. It can be a coworker. It can, but somehow there's some kind of relationship there. And that just makes it easier for the perpetrator. Perpetrators seek out people that they can befriend and that they can build up trust with, and it's easier for them to perpetrate. There are some stranger sexual assaults, but those are just a lot more rare. But those are the ones we hear about on TV,
right.
And the movies are made about those because they're sensationalized. But not every sexual assault perpetrator is a Ted Bundy, A lot of the times they're more like, your fellow student or someone like that and you have some kind of acquaintance with.
And to go along with that, recently in the news, we've heard a lot about the bathroom bill, the trans bathroom bill, and many people are worried because if they go into the restroom, that's where most of the sexual assaults. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll give you my opinion on that. Well,
or what you see statistically, compared to the trans community.
Yeah, well, when we first heard it, we were kind of shocked because. For one thing, if you look on the side of it where the argument was where people thought that transgender people were perpetrators, that's just ridiculous because we've seen very few times where a perpetrator is identified as LGBT. Of course it can happen. Perpetrators can be from any walk of life, from, any identity, any orientation. But just because someone is transgender or LGBT, does not mean that they're a perpetrator. That couldn't be further from the truth. But then on the other side of that, the argument we're hearing more is that this is going to give men an excuse to dress up as a woman, go into the bathroom, and sexually assault girls. Well, if they were going to do that, they were going to do that already. And there was already about 15 states that have bills that are that give the rights to the transgender community to use the bathroom of their choice. And not one time have any of those states had a problem with a perpetrator, using that law to go in and rape somebody. There are very few statistics where someone's been sexually assaulted in a bathroom. They're there, and they happen, of course, but not like people think. In fact, there's a lot more children, girls, who are sexually assaulted in their own home, and in their friend's home or a relative's home than there are in a bathroom.
And according to the Stewards of Children Darkness to Light, something I've read, it's 10% of, or 90% of victims are sexually assaulted by somebody that they know, yes. And then that 10% is somebody that they don't know.
Right.
And also numbers show that 50% of the transgender community are sexually assaulted. So it would seem like those numbers don't match up with the transgender bill.
I think if this bill were to go through, the people that are going to be hurt the most are the transgender community, because you're going to have a male presenting person going into a woman's bathroom, and people are going to get upset about that, or a female presenting person going into the men's bathroom. Is that what I said? Anyway, so that's going to cause a more dangerous situation to that transgender individual than it is to anybody else. And so, that bill is just something that's used as a political tool that is just discriminatory against the transgender community.
So it would be detrimental to not only the transgender, but probably
everybody.
The community. Earlier we talked about, or you brought up a good point about relationship sexual assaults when you were talking. And many times, sometimes we hear people saying, well, that's my girlfriend, that's my boyfriend, that's my significant other. It's not sexual assault. What is that considered in your eyes, or in the agency's eyes? What would that be considered?
Well, whenever there's a sexual assault, it's usually because the perpetrator is needing to dominate someone else, have power over someone else. And sometimes in a relationship, and more times than not, the male usually is the dominant one in a straight relationship. It's just a way to exert that power over someone else. For years, for centuries, women have been looked at as property of men. And in relationships, we still talk about men being head of the household, and the woman is the one who supports her man, and that sort of thing. That I think some of these rigid gender roles that are still being reinforced, I think that has a lot to do with it. And so in order for one person to have power in the relationship and have power and control over the other one, sometimes they use sex as the tool, and so they'll sexually assault that person. They don't see it as sexual assault because they view that person as their property, and I think that's one way they justify it. But you can see how easily that can happen in a relationship, because that person's with you, that you may even live with that person, and then the betrayal of trust that has for the victim is even greater, because I know this person, I trust this person, I may even love this person, and they've done this to me and my body. That's really an emotional and psychological damage is done to the victim.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate all these answers and sitting with us and
Glad to be
talking with
here.
us. Is there anything else that you would like to add, maybe about upcoming events with the agency, or anything that you would like to let our viewers know?
We'll probably be having a fundraiser pretty soon. And I won't say what it is because it's kind of a surprise. So we'll just wait, and when we're ready to announce it, we'll announce it. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to involve the whole community. So just keep your ears and eyes open for that. And then, yeah, anytime we have an awareness event or a fundraiser or anything like that, the whole community is welcome. We just really appreciate the support and the donations that the community have already given to us, either monetarily or through their time. During Pride Week, we really saw how volunteers help us, help us with our services, help us with our events. And we really appreciate that. That does not go unnoticed. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Thank you again. And just to let y'all know, Cadence is still on the phone, still getting updates from our PFLAG, the main chapter. So she's currently on the phone with them. So we'll have some more updates either on our Facebook San Angelo Pride page or on our next show, which will be August 24th at 7 p.m. We'll have another Out Talk. So we hope that everybody will join us then. And just to go over a couple of events on the LGBT side, that on the first Monday, we do have a support group for the adults at the off of Oaks. And again, look at the San Angelo Pride page for more information for that. And also on the first Wednesday of every month, we have a youth support group designed for the youth that is held here at the Open Arms office. So any youth are 13 to 18 or 13 to 17, it's more than welcome to come. It's open to all youth, LGBT plus and allies, so everybody's invited. It's all inclusive. So we do hope to see everybody either on the first Monday or the youth on Wednesday. And again, if y'all have anything, any other questions, please send it to us, and we will be more than happy to answer them. And until next time, Facebook, stand up, stand out, and be you. Thank you.